by passion. Totally consumed by passion. Put on a strategically placed shell. Raise a little hell. Frolic in the surf, sand and turf. On totally nude island.
Darling, show me love. Tell me lies. You do something to me. Make it all through the night. Touch me once, kiss me twice. You do something to me on this isle of desire.
Kissed by eternal sun. Kissed by eternal sun. A few miles north of the Tropic of Desire. Complete new island. Complete new island. Complete new island. Complete new island.
Let me along to your totally nude island. Let me astray to your totally nude island. Let me along to your totally nude island.
Good morning, Vietnam. Just joking. Good morning from Tokyo. It is I, the king of the circadian rhythm. Holy shit, is my biological clock all sorts of fucked up. But I've just woken up with you guys, so it can't be that bad. Now, can it? I had a nice little nap today. Nap that resulted in me waking up at 10:45 at night, but it was a good one. I went to bed at like 6 and woke up, rolled out of bed, talked to the hentai king of Tokyo, and what can I say? Life is good, and we're going to break down the ISIS tapes once again. Oh, man. Oh, God. I think we're just going to jump right into it. All right, so we're going to talk about our buddy Roosh V. The V stands for very crazy. I don't know. I mean, I don't know, man. Listen, I hope when I'm 40 or whatever, like him, well, that's only going to be in 6 years. I hope I'm not having, like, some publicly displayable mental breakdown. Like, I don't know. You just need to grow up and like, just keep banging broads or whatever. I just don't get it. We're going to talk about Roosh V, his mental breakdown towards the God pill, and how I personally believe this is him having an existential crisis to an extent, right? So I'm putting on some thermal socks because my feet are so cold. Victorious, what's up, man? Joining us on Instagram. Come on over to YouTube. Come on in, children of the Church of Hot Dude. Join me and let us take our daily bread of the red pill, shall we? How am I looking? Are the dual gold chains looking good? On a 10, on a scale of 1 to 10, how ignorant are they? Can you put that in the chat? And scale of 1 to 10, the double gold chains. How ignorant are we? Let me know. Oh, shout out to my man, Aaron, the tailored carnivore in the house. Aaron, I bought a big old steak today and thought of you. Is that okay? Did I break any dude codes? Let me know. Let's go. Young Trey with the 10, John P with the 6. These are my ignorant levels. Jay Wayne with the 11. This one goes to 11. Right, but this one goes to 11. Oh, gee, my guy. Aaron is the fucking man. I love this guy. Aaron, great to have you on Dude Party. Aaron is the tailored carnivore. Vandy with the 14. Somebody give me 100. Jacob there rating the ignorance of my double gold chain on a scale of 1 to 10. What do you feel like? The double. Can we get a shot of that? Look at me. I look like I'm straight out of. I'm like a Jewish guy straight out of Hollywood. Look at that. See? Can we get an angle? I love it. I saw an NFL running back wearing this, and in full blue pill normie fashion, I was like, I'm gonna copy that. I'm copying him. I'm doing the double gold chain, and I honestly love it. You need to go full Will the Coldest with the 10 chains. All right, guys. Yes, Rabbi MLD, shalom. Shall we just do it? Who's ready? Should we just jump straight back into the ISIS tapes? On a scale of 1 to 10 for ignorance, I give you a full Democrat. Oh my God, Van, you're a funny guy, man. Let's do this, shall we? You need a splinter. Shalom, my brother. Shalom. Okay. I'm not even gonna do phone lines because this is just gonna take a long time. All right. So we got Roosh V.
Amen.
The V stands for very crazy. Here at his ISIS induction training camp or whatever. Oh my God. Oh Lord. Jesus Christ. It's just so cringe for me to do this, but I mean, you guys seem to like it. And yeah, shall we full screen it? All right. So where we left off, he was talking about how his girlfriend that he met in a bar, right? Red flag number 1, had continued to frequently attend these bars and everything, right? So and then he found out she was texting her ex-boyfriend and stuff. So this girl, this is the classic, he was kind of the rebound for her Chad guy, right? Sometimes when the girls have a super rebound, they'll go for the complete opposite of the kind of guy, the guy that she was falling in love with. So her previous man was like a big, strong, white Polish guy, and then she accidentally falls for Muhammad Attar here. And so, then she looks at him and kind of has some internal disgust, remorse, or whatever, and starts going back to the ex, and he's fighting it, she's fighting it, but the reality is the attraction's just not going to be as high as it was for the first guy. Roosh got alpha widowed because she was alpha widowed by her previous guy, and then she kept going back, and Roosh got cucked, and he put up all his bullshit. So we're going to continue listening on to this and continue my psychological breakdown of this man, which is all too easy at this point.
It's because I'm from the USA where men go to jail when their woman calls the police on them.
So he's throwing this girl out, and he's recording his iPad and making her, as she cleans up all her stuff to get out of the house, he's recording her, and he's talking about it right now.
I set a tablet up that was set up to record everything. So now my very feminine girlfriend, when I was telling her to get out, she got kind of violent. She was pushing, she was getting in the way. I said, can you?
Like I said earlier on the previous episode, a woman doesn't physically escalate with you unless she's psychologically profiled you out that you won't hit her or do anything. And I can't tell you how many times I've been in a relationship with a girl, and the women are always the first ones to initiate some sort of physical violence. That's the truth right there.
You push me in front of here, yeah, do it again. But I made sure all the action was captured by the tablet because I don't know what she's going to do when you scorn a woman. Man, she is capable of some bad things, but not the women here. And
again, a guy who is afraid of women or afraid of what they can do to you, kind of living in fear of them, it's kind of pathetic, as you can see.
So I put all of her stuff in the bag, and I noticed that half of it was stuff that I bought. And I had to basically physically take her out. It was done. And from the first time, I learned not to meet face to face. She wanted to communicate with me. She can do it by phone, but I can tell you, she wasn't sorry. It was my fault. It was my fault. I misinterpreted things. I knew about it. I was playing a fantasy that no, there was nothing wrong with this guy she was extensively chatting with and meeting with. It was me. Her girlfriends were right about me. I'm too jealous. I am too controlling. So she wasn't sorry, but she was in pain. I remember she tried to pull the same trick as the last time. She got a cup of coffee, came to my apartment with a bigger puppy dog face. I mean, she looked like a pug almost. And she said, "Can I get a hug?" And I'm thinking, man, it's moments like this which really determine where your life goes. I said,
This guy, good Lord. I mean, I just don't understand. Guys, if I grew out, I don't know, man. You never know what the future holds for you, but I just don't feel like I'm going to have a mental breakdown and make ISIS tapes. Like, just looking at this, the condition of this man. You see, when a man grows a large beard like this means that he's going through a transition phase in his life, and clearly he is transitioning because, you know, his sister passed away from cancer, and I think that's the real thing that fucked with him, but he talks about it more here. We're going to continue to dive into this, but check this out. It gets this one goes pretty deep.
No. And that was it. So while we chatted a bit on the phone.
No, Vandy, your beard is far different. Your beard is sculpted and taken care of. This one is full, like, this is just like a disgruntled homeless person to an extent. Like, this is just the crisis beard he's growing. Your beard is different. Your beard is like, it's clean cut. It's you know, you trim it and make sure it's all taken care of. This is not the same at all.
I mean, our town was so small. I would see her in public. We'd have a small chat, but it was definitely done. And when it was done, when she knew it was completely over, she got so angry. She said, "Don't ever play with my heart again." Okay, sweetie. It was over. So the eighth thing that I learned, and the women in the room can close their ears, is don't believe anything out of a woman's mouth ever. It's all lies.
That's Red Pill 101. Like, you learned that the first fucking week. You judge a person by their actions, not their words. But I guess this is amateur hour. I don't know. Whatever. Whatever.
It's manipulation. Instead, look at her actions. Do the actions match with the words? Then it's fine. Look at how eager she is to be a woman that is good. A woman who doesn't want to go and party with her friends in this town, in the next town.
That's on him. That's on you, Roosh Pie. You went to the den of hoes and you pulled a hoe out and you're like, okay, she's hot. Because hoes are hot. They're sexy for a reason. And they're sexy for the reason that they want to get fucking dick down. Again and again and again. So when you take a hoe out of her natural habitat, which is like the nightclubs, and you wonder why this shit happens, that's just, you're 40 years old. You're talking to everybody, you banged over 200 girls or whatever. You didn't figure this out over the years. You didn't, like, this is where everything doesn't start to add up with your words and your actions, including your fucking mental breakdown.
But if a girl is saying, "I love you, I love you, I love you," but she's out in these, honky-tonk bars getting drunk on Friday and Saturday, got some bad news. So what happened? Do you remember all those beautiful photos I took of her? What do you think happened to all those? They went online everywhere. the photos I took of her that make her look so beautiful. As a token of my love to her, she used them to get attraction, to get attention from other men after me.
Again, is this not am I just super red pilled with the 2 chains? Like, is this not common sense? Anytime you take a picture of a girl, first of all, I don't take a picture of a girl unless I'm in the picture with her, or I just see her as cannon fodder. Like, I'm ready just to fuck her and throw her into the into the wind and let the ejaculation fly. Duh. Is this not common sense to you guys in the chat? Like, if you take a girl's picture in the age of 2020, no shit, she's gonna put it on social media, especially if the picture's high quality. Is this groundbreaking for anybody, or is this new? Am I the only one? Okay, is this common sense? If this is common sense to you, press 1. If this is not common sense, press 2. I just need to poll the audience. Because for me, I know as soon as you sit down and start taking pictures of a girl, she's going to fucking use it on social media, especially as social media accounts. How is this like profound PUA?
2015 was my year. 2016 is also my year. Every year is my fucking
Ben
year.
Jones says, when you truly give your life to God, everything you do is for God's glory. Roosh is still trying to glorify himself. Don't trust this move by him. My man, bro. Ben Jones, solid analysis. Wait until you see what we got going on coming up here. Because we talking about narcissism. Yeah, bro. Wait until you fucking see. Click on that link right there if you want to send a donation via the Streamlabs link. Because the Super Chat does keep 30%. And let's be fiscally responsible. Let's continue, shall we? Here we go.
If I meet a woman right now and she becomes my wife, and one summer we go on the beach and she says, "Rooshie Poo, can you take a picture of me, please?" No, I can't.
Duh.
Only 1 month after we broke up, she found a new guy, and I am happy to announce that she is engaged to be married with him. Good for her. But if you're a guy and you break up with a girl, I got some bad news. There's not going to be a line of girls banging down your door. So that was the case with me. What am I going to do now? Well, the game teaches.
This whiny tone is just so... I hate people who complain, and most importantly, men who complain and whine. It's the worst. Like, I kind of expect it from, like, women. Like, women complain about everything. It's kind of a joke in our society to an extent because they do it so much. But, a woman complains like water runs, But the way this guy's whining, this is like the whine cast. Like, do I get on the internet and sit here and whine about people? I hope I fucking don't, but... I don't know. I'm just very solution oriented, and this whole crybaby fest, this crybaby narcissism ISIS fest he's throwing is like, it's hello, yikes department. Could you recall Roosh V?
In this case, is if you break up with a girlfriend, then you need to go sleep with 10 other girls. Then you'll get over her. So I tried this out. I went to the bar, started to sleep with low-grade girls, of course. I brought...
Because that's all you attract usually, and this girl's an outlier. That's why you made her your girlfriend.
...them home, but it had the opposite effect. Because all these low-grade girls I was sleeping with were reminding me of the love that I thought I had, but I lost. So I said, wait, I have to stop this, because this is not helping. And plus, the thrill of it, the thrill of the game... It wasn't anywhere near the heights. I wasn't getting a buzz anymore. I wasn't on this cloud 9, this cool afterglow where I felt like a king. Now it's like, is she still in my room? How do I get her out? So something was definitely changing. I knew I couldn't go back to what I was doing. I needed...
That's normal if you master anything or do anything long enough. the repetition and the predictability of it all. You know, that's just normal. With like, I mean, for me now, like to even think about having to like put on clothing and go out and like, you know, tolerate looking at a chick and like hearing her talk and all that shit. I'm like, ugh, just show up at my house naked. Let's just do that. So I understand with him on this point, but I mean, it doesn't excuse the bountiful beta male actions from him.
Did a break from girls totally, a break for 5 days by going to the seaside. 5 long days without focusing on women. I went to the beach, and in Poland there is a seaside up in the north close to the Baltic Sea. And there's actually there was a lot of sand, and usually in Europe the beaches don't have that. So I went on the sandy beach and I looked around and I saw a lot of birds. I thought, cool, I want to feed these birds bread. That's how you know you are getting old.
Nah, that's that Steve the Dean game. He's feeding the birds, feeding the ducks. Oh, Lord. Let's watch it.
So I went to the supermarket. I bought a loaf of bread. Then I came back onto the beach. I opened the bag and started to tear out little pieces of bread. And I threw it to the little guys. And what I had done is created a battle royale between 4 different species of birds. The first species was the pigeon. And the pigeon, I'm sure you know, these dirty birds. They're bobbing their heads. Really numerous birds. They're persistent. If they see food, they just go after it. The second kind of bird was the seagull. Now, the seagulls, those were the big birds. Those were the alpha birds. They had the highest bench press out of all of the birds. Very dominant. If they wanted a piece of bread, you better get out of their way. The third bird was the sparrow. These were very tiny and weak birds. Do you even lift, bro? They couldn't compete. But
Those are the Roosh V birds.
they were very fast. So I'd be throwing a piece of bread, and there a pigeon's about to get it, and then from nowhere a sparrow comes, plucks the bread, and flies off in glee and eats it in peace. Wow, they were smart. And then the fourth kind of bird was the crow. The crows, they were very patient. They sat on the outskirts calculating. They were thinking, we're not going to get involved in this Thunderdome. They are going to wait for a clear advantage, or just wait for me to throw the bread directly at them. Now, the seagulls were the strongest, but they couldn't monopolize the entire bread bounty. They weren't fast enough, and there weren't enough of them to exclude the other birds who wanted the bread too. And I also made sure I had enough bread that I was going to make sure every bird on that beach had a tasty bread snack.
Okay.
So really, their fighting, their jockeying was a waste. They didn't have to fight. They just had to line up and wait. I would give each one as much bread as they wanted.
Because he is their benevolent bread god. Going from having a crisis of your masculinity, getting totally cucked by a girl from the fucking gym, or the gym, excuse me, from the bar. Now you're having a crisis, so you take some bread and you're going down to the river or seaside. You're feeding birds. Lo, how the mighty have fallen.
One thing I could do is create battles.
Forget the God pill. Let me introduce you to the bird pill, says Nuno.
Based on where I threw the bread. If I threw a piece of bread right in between a seagull and a pigeon, I could cause the seagull to rip the feathers off of other birds. I felt like a god.
His narcissism is transferring over to his
And then I
bird
thought,
feeding.
aren't those birds not unlike us? Here we are competing, fighting for what? Fighting for food, for money, for girls to live in this apartment or that one. We're always fighting. So that leads to the ninth thing that I learned. In the dinner of life, there is more than enough for everyone. Focus on your plate in front of you instead of worrying about what everyone else has. We have more than enough food that is coming towards us, but we're obsessed with looking about what Steve has and what Stacy has, and the girls he has and the money and the cars. We're obsessed with it, but we don't appreciate what we have in front of us. And almost always we have more than enough. And the food we have in front of us is tailored for us. You know, your food is for you. Me trying to take your food is not going to make me happy, but it makes me think I will be happier. The second thing I learned actually from this is that you don't need to do crazy exotic things to understand how the world is. I thought that I had to get myself in these really extreme situations, terrifying, maybe edge of your seat, exotic, this mountain, that mountain. But in 2017, when this happened, the biggest lesson I learned was just getting $1 loaf.
Jesus Christ. So he got cucked in 2017 and he's still crying about it in 2019 when this was taken. I don't know what's worse, him or fucking Anthony from 21 Convention still harping on about Rolo and crying about that every day. Smash like in the comment section, boys. Smash that like. Which Roosh book is the best? I don't know. I've never read them. I don't need to read that shit. I mean, I'm gonna write the book called the Gorilla Pimp Bible, and it's only payable with a vial of virgin blood and virgin tears, which Amazon accepts. So keep your eye out for that one.
For bread and feeding it to birds, and you can find birds anywhere. A Zen master once said that he could understand the entire world just by walking through his back garden, just by looking at the interactions of the trees and the plants and the insects and the birds. So you don't need to go as far as you think to get a feeling, to get an understanding of what this life is really about. And the answer could be much closer than you think. So after this trip to the beach, I had hit a critical crossroads. I had hit a dead end with hedonism, dead end with chasing after girls. I was tired, exhausted. I was tired of being obsessed with genitals. I was tired of it. I was tired of looking at a woman and thinking how I could get her into bed and how to get her out of bed. I was tired of it. The pleasure I was getting, the dopamine I was getting was going down and down and down. I wasn't seeing any joy out of it. I started to see the limits of what the material world could give me. Now, I'm not a famous guy, but I got a taste of what the famous guys have. I got a little bit of the girls, a little bit of the money, the travel, the novelty, the fame online, the status, people stopping you, people saying your work changed them. I got a taste of that. And even if that doubled, I wouldn't be two times happier. In fact, my happiness would not change. So I hit a dead end. Me pursuing things that the world has wouldn't make me feel better. The second thing that was going on around this time is that I was watching the world get more evil. Now they were pushing the gay stuff everywhere. I remember in 2015, though, I did a talk in New York. We had a happy hour in a bar after, and on the TV was an interview. And in this interview was Bruce Jenner is now Caitlyn Jenner. And I thought, this isn't going to catch on. Boy, was I wrong.
Oh, Mike, you said low testosterone. I was thinking that in my head. I don't know if I should have said it, but yeah, I think it's a little bit of him coping with his testosterone levels dropping as well. Guys with low testosterone levels, whiny, they cry babies, everything's everything, the world, the sky is falling, and it's gonna come and crush you, and there's nothing you should do about it, so let's fucking whine. I despise people who fucking cry and whine. It's not. It is really the surefire way to piss me off.
Not only did it catch on, but they started to go after the kids. They are now, it's getting younger and younger to when we're supposed to celebrate that an 8-year-old is now getting injected with some type of hormones to block going through puberty, changing him to a she or the vice versa.
That's a small outlier of idiots that are doing that. It's not like millions of people or hundreds of thousands of people. It's like a very, 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 very small percentage. It's just the media, they got fuck all to do, so they report on it.
And once I saw the children being impacted, where their free will was essentially being hijacked, I looked at that and thought that is objectively evil. Objectively.
I agree with that.
Doing this to kids, brainwashing them to make them think it's okay. This is the most evil thing I've seen. And I'm looking around and this evil is growing. What's going on?
Evil and stupid. I think it's more so besides stupid.
But the worst news that happened is that my sister's cancer came back. And it came back in her lungs. And I was in Poland at the time when I got the call. And I told her we're going to fight it just like we did the first time. I didn't make the same mistake as I did in going to a bar and finding the first girl. No, I didn't do that. So thankfully I learned. So I booked a flight back home and I'm ready to go through whatever the oncologists have in store, some more rounds of chemo, get the stop the spread of it. I was pretty hopeful. But this time the cancer moved really quickly. I remember she was on the nasal oxygen and I was in charge of changing the tanks out. And even though the setting was very high, she still complained to me that she couldn't catch her breath. And now when we went to the doctors, I noticed that their stance, it kind of changed. It wasn't so much we're going to fight this, we're going to beat it. I noticed that their language was more about, we want you to be in comfort. And I didn't understand it. They weren't honest about what was going on. So it was a game to read between the lines of what the doctors were saying. So unfortunately, my sister died. And I can tell you, I didn't know what to do. Nothing in life had prepared me to deal with losing your sister. So the only thing I did, I started to wear her cross.
So this is where this is just, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but we'll just talk about personal philosophy here for a second. I have already mentally made peace with the fact of every member of my family dying. The woman I love, my pals. Like, one thing I learned from living in Asia and embracing, if I ever have any sort of religious breakdown, it's gonna be Buddhist. But I side with Buddhism because the root of all suffering is attachment. And you can't be attached to anything or you're going to suffer. Money, fitness, fame, fortune, friends, family. It all ends. Everything is going to end one day. So I've made, peace about all this stuff. I just don't, I don't know if it's I'm above average and I've calculated all this stuff, and it's because I, always have the little, when you smoke weed, you have a little bit of the existential crises. So when I do my little holidays over to California or Denver or Washington, go to the dispensary, eat some gummies, and I thought about this shit before. So I don't know if it's just a lack of perception. But it just kind of ties, it really makes me realize, like kind of lacking with situational awareness and kind of ties into narcissism to an extent here. I don't know. It's like, and part of me, to be honest with you guys, and this may sound cold and ruthless, and I could be wrong, but part of me feels like, he's using this as I don't even know if he's intentional, but he's using this as like kind of a fiasco. Like, he's using this as part of the whole tour thing, giving speech and his sister dying crying, because he has a lot of red flags of a guy who's just doing shit to be just for the sake of attention. And so I don't even know if this motives are pure anymore, but that's, here it is. Josh says, I hope mine dies soon and leave me that money. Oh my God, that's terrible.
And me and her, we were both baptized in the Armenian Orthodox Church. And I had a belief in God, but I didn't have the faith. I didn't pray. I didn't think that things were operating according to God's will or plan. And now I can tell you all, I was truly lost. I mean, I was lost even before this, but now I didn't know how to live. And after a couple months of being with my mom and dad, I went back to Europe to figure it out. I tried to read these books on grief, but they did not actually help. I started to develop a drinking habit. I was drinking every day just to numb myself for 1 or 2 hours. It seemed to feel good. For those hours, the pain was gone, but then as soon as the alcohol it wore off, the pain would come back. Now, all that fun, I hate to admit it to you all, but the only way I knew how to feel good was to sleep around. So even after she died, I tried it. I went to the bars, brought home some girls, but it became very clear that I can't do this anymore. And it's not something I wanted to do. I would go to clubs and start to feel disgusted with myself. So what do I do now?
That's what I always talk about here at the old Modern Life Dating is. That's my goal, is to get you guys to this level so that you can move on and just have this part of your life checkboxed, not make it your entire identity. Because, you can grow old of chasing women, and I recommend it. So, because most guys, they're a slave to women their whole lives. They're a slave to chasing pussy, and let alone they're ignorant of the intersexual dynamic between men and women. So they're like, it can become addicting to some people because they don't have it fucking figured out. But this is my goal at MLD, is to get you guys situated and sorted and, tired of pussy because you've mastered it. Then you can move on and do something good with yourself. Roosh just happened to get influenced by his narcissism. He's an extremely narcissistic guy. Like I said, if you just do the work and you could do a little bit of understanding of, like, he doesn't follow anybody on Twitter. There's little things, and he has like his little tour and stuff. So all these little red flags kind of compound and lead us to these ISIS videos.
And when your family is extremely healthy, everything is fine at home, you go travel and have fun, it seems like a great thing. But the second there's a missing piece of the puzzle, when such a huge amount of meaning is lost from you, doing those things seemed utterly pointless. There wasn't any point. Why am I even here in Europe? So the months went on, and during that time, I can do live streams, and when the camera is on and 1,000 people are watching, I can make you laugh. I can get angry at people and provide this kind of entertainment. But once the live streams were over, I was back in that same pit without any more knowledge of what to do and where to go after this. So it happened that 11 months after she died, I was in Warsaw. And there I was just hanging out, and I felt the urge to pray. And I had never had this urge before, and I didn't understand it. Up to that point, I thought to pray was kind of treating God like a genie in a bottle, where you make a wish for $1 million, a Lamborghini, a hot girl, and you hope that the wish, it comes true. But I made up a prayer that I thought sounded good, something about, please God, help me endure this pain. And I didn't do it in a formal way, a proper way, but when I would get up, I'd say the line or something, and then it was done. And not long after that, maybe a couple days, something I had said on a live stream went viral online. And what I had said was that obsession over butts is a gateway to homosexuality. 7 million people saw it. All the gays were writing to me saying, "No, Roosh, you're gay. You're in the closet." Because if you ever disagree with a gay, the reason is you are gay. And then girls started sending me photos of their butts to prove me wrong. So that's a lesson for you. Yeah, girls, I hate boobs. I really hate them. And then the photos are going to come in. And then one girl,
You see how he's getting like aroused off of it? Like he's talking about his previous, little spurts of fame and fortune and, viral attention or whatever. He's getting all excited. And he's acting all wormy with his little weaselly gestures. It's just, he does not behave like an alpha male whatsoever. Like when people are like move like super fast and rigid, that's not confident behavior whatsoever. It's wormy, little squirrely beta male behavior.
she went above and beyond. She sent me a video of her inserting dildos in various holes. And I thought that it was custom porn made for me. So what did I do? I masturbated. And the urge to pray had disappeared totally. I thought, that's weird. I went to another town, a Polish town, a few hours away, a smaller one. And this time, this urge came back, and it was stronger than before. So I thought, man, I better take it seriously. So I went online and I Googled it, how to pray, and I found an Orthodox site that really helped me. I printed it out and then I laid it out. And I must tell you where I was. I was in the same city as 2011 when I had the highest notch count year, and actually the very same apartment. I couldn't pray by the bed because of all the filthy things that I had done there, so I prayed by the couch instead. But I had done some filthy things there too. So I printed it.
You gotta let everybody know how cool an alpha you are in the midst of your coming to Christ. You gotta let them know, I had a lot of sex by the bed, but I also had a lot of sex by the couch. I'm king. I am your Ayatollah. I am your cult leader and ISIS guy here. You gotta worship him because you paid money to come listen to him. SMH.
It out. I got it home. I got on my knees and I started to read it, started to pray. And I didn't know what I was saying. I didn't understand it. But
Silverman says, he said liking butts is gay, but fapped to dildos going into butts. I mean, the cognitive dissonance is, if you pay attention to what is really going on with, kind of a psychological red pill eye, you can see a lot of shit doesn't add up here. And you got you got a bunch of fools in the audience just getting simped out and tricked. I don't know if this is genius or just accidental, but I don't know. It's fucking. I just couldn't imagine going there and listening to this guy. And let alone having to sit there for we've only been watching we started at the 1 hour and 15 mark. We're about 45 minutes in, give or take. This thing is 2.5 hours. I'm falling asleep right now at this shit, but it's good it's good commentary to coverage. But you guys have to like, when you're in like the body language group and you're studying people, we talked about the Harry and Meghan body language last night on the Body Language Mastery webinars. So, when things don't add up, there's lack of congruency. Trust what you see, and trust that something is a little off. Trust yourself.
But a short while into the prayer, tears started coming down my face, and they wouldn't stop. They were coming and coming. I wasn't sad, but now with the tears coming down, I felt sad. But I finished. And the next day, I felt like a burden had been lifted. I wasn't as sad as I was the day before. And I thought, I better keep on doing this. At first,
Prayer is a form of meditation, and meditation is a healthy form of catharsis, and catharsis is emotional release, which is the goal of all psychological interventions that a psychologist does with therapy, is they want you to release your inner emotional turmoil, and it's called catharsis. CATHARSIS, catharsis. He is experiencing catharsis via prayer, and therefore now he has have some spiritual awakening. Well, let me ask you guys this. What if Roosh V was born in Baghdad, right? Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Morocco, Egypt. Would he still have this same calling to Christ, or would it be an awakening with Allah, right? Or would it be, if he was born in Japan or China, would he have like a Confucius belief system instead, right? There's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of holes in this game, and I think a big part of it is I think to an extent it's him coping with the peak of his life coming to an end, and he didn't really capitalize on everything correctly, and he didn't make the shift into the kind of like the empire alpha. Is like when you have money and you have status and you have all these things, all multiple streams of income coming in on a passive basis. You didn't play your cards right, in my opinion. And now he's here because, there's a guy in our chat who went to his little ISIS event, and he went there with his beautiful girlfriend, and Roosh was all over her. Paid for the dinner, was talking to her about Armenian. I think she's Armenian, and he's talking to her about the Armenian church and all this stuff. And so he was all over her. So he's willing to give this God facade on tour. Of course, if you pay for your ticket prices, right? Pay for your tickets. You'll get the God tour. But it just doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. What would happen? What do you guys think would happen if he was born in Middle East? Would he come to Jesus like he did now? Or is this all him rationalizing everything and trying to make sense of some stuff that doesn't even make sense, right?
first, I started to ask for advice on simple day-to-day things, and I was getting answers back. The first thing that I asked is where I should live. Because what was the point of living in Europe if I wasn't going to sleep with women? Was I going to stay there because the coffee and the croissants were very excellent, which is a pretty good reason to stay. But I did ask God, where do I live? What do I do now? And the next day, I remember the name of a city popped into my mind. And the city is only 3 hours to the west of where my parents in Washington, D.C. live. I had never been there before, but I had heard of it. I went online, checked out how much it costs to live there, and it was a place that I could afford to live in. Everything about it checked out. It was a conservative place. And after this tour is done, I plan to find a home or a place to live very close to where this city is. So how did this pop into my head like that?
Of course.
Other answers came from other people.
The Lord.
As the weather was starting to warm in Poland, all the women were dressed in a sexy way, and I couldn't help but look and couldn't help to feel the lustful thoughts. I asked God to help me with that. Please take these women away. Cover them up. And then I remember the next day, my dad got into a conversation with me. My dad said when he was young, a spiritual elder told him that even if a naked girl is in front of you, you don't see her. At first, I thought, why is my dad talking to me about girls? He never does. Wait, wasn't that what I asked God about? So there I learned that I have to use my own willpower to control what I see. So I had to maintain custody of my eye because I can't change what every other girl is doing out there.
His alignment of his body's off too. I don't know if you guys noticed that. He's got some serious adjustments he needs to be making.
Then when I started to come out and tell people I was a Christian, they started getting angry. A lot of people, they accused me of lying, of trying to become a Joel Osteen, get a private jet and a yacht. And even some people who were very close to me were doubting it. My mom, when she saw that or heard that I was watching a documentary on being a monk, she freaked out. She said, "You're going too far into this," as if, maintaining her level of faith is fine, but anything past that is bad. So then I asked God, what should I do about people who are not on the same spiritual path as me? Because they seem to be mad. They seem to be angry about it, especially people who are close to me. Well, I didn't care too much about the people on the internet, but I want people, my friends and my family, to be somewhat on board. And then I asked this during a prayer, and I expected to get an answer maybe a day or two later. It seemed to be answers were coming from other people. And the answer came back right away. And it came back from a direction in the room. I could feel where the thought came in. And I had never experienced that. And the three words that came to me were patience and love. And I thought, yes, that is what I have to do. And it's what I have been doing since then. And I must say, when I pray and my icons are in front of me, the icon of Jesus Christ is on the right. Other things were happening, nonstop coincidences that were going the right way. One example, I watched a video online, old one, about spiritual warfare, and it was great. And the next day I met up with a friend and I said, "Hey friend, what did you do last night?" He said he watched a video. Turns out he watched the exact same video as me nearly at the same time. Out of the billions of videos that are on YouTube, what are the odds? So the 10th thing I learned is to humble yourself before God and ask him for help, and he will then help you. Then,
Dear Jesus, send hoes for unprotected sex, STD-free hoes, to my door right now, and let them knock and seek my alpha sperm. Please, God. This is my only wish.
and after that, one answer I didn't get is, well, God, what happened to my sister? Why did she die? She was the good one. I was the bad one. I was the one that was hated by tens of thousands of people.
Okay, so this is where it gets peak narcissism and peak cringe. Pay attention. If you're like half-assing the listening in right now, I want you to pay attention, stop what you're doing, listen to this. This is the peak. When I read this, I've not read this.
So,
when I
you have
listened to
accepted
this,
the truth.
I was just like, I cannot believe how this guy has no fucking idea of what level of narcissism he lies upon. Listen to this shit.
around the world. She was the good one. She lived with my mom. She didn't do even 1% the bad things that I did. Why was she taken away at such a young age, at the age of 31, while her older brother is basically allowed to continue? So in Poland at this time, I had a friend from the UK. His name is Albert. And Albert is a guy that has done every drug known to man and has survived to tell the tale. He was like a human experiment, but he had been pushing me to try mushrooms, magic mushrooms, for a couple of years. I don't do drugs. I tried pot a couple times. I don't like it. I'll do coffee and I'll do alcohol. That's it.
You should smoke some weed. That'll help you out with this existential crisis you have. And you need to smoke some good shit. We need to take Roosh and just have a good old marijuana session with him in a state that it's illegal, of course.
No, Albert, I don't want your drug. But then after my sister died, I went online and they said that the mushrooms could help with grief and so on. So maybe 2 or 3 weeks after I had started to pray, Albert said it would be a good time to try it because the weather is warm, and he wants to take this drug outside. He said it's better if you take it outside.
So now we're now it's God and drugs, are God, drugs, and a bag of bread with birds. I think I'm just gonna go do a tour and talk about my life and be transparent and make the same amount of money as he is. Oh God.
So on the first warm day of the spring in Poland of this year, in March, we went to a park, and there we found a little encampment that was about 30 yards away from the main path. And he handed me a jar of, it was 1.8 grams of the mushroom soaking in lemon juice. And I gobbled that down. I trusted him totally. Then we sat and we talked for a while, and I noticed that the trees were starting to sway back and forth, unlike I had ever seen before, not in response to the wind or to birds that were landing on the branches. And I said, Albert, is it just me or are the trees moving? And he said, it's just you. So that's when I knew I was getting high. The trees started to move, but everything also was starting to have a movement to it. And the ground, the forest floor felt like a moon bounce. It was really spongy. So I looked to Albert and I said, Albert, I need to find solid ground, because it felt weird to have ground that wasn't solid. I went to the asphalt path, and I remember asphalt being hard. But then I got on the asphalt and it was as soft as this carpet. And I thought, this is kind of weird. Well, let me sit on this bench and watch the people for a little while. I remember I told myself, all right, Roosh, act normal. Don't act high. But suddenly I didn't know how to act. Do I put my hands on my legs? Do I cross my legs? When people walk by, do I maintain eye contact with them? Do I smile at them? Do I wink at them? Do I say, hi, how are you doing? Do I turn away from them? I didn't, all the questions that I don't have to answer when I'm sober. Suddenly, when I'm high, how to treat other people in a socially acceptable way, I was totally lost. I didn't know how to sit in a way where I didn't look like a normal freak. And then I would see a kid pull on his mom's shirt and think it's the funniest thing ever and start to laugh at it. And I'm like, boy, I can't be around other people. So I went back into the forest, into the encampment. And I said, Albert, I can't find solid ground. And he laughed and said, isn't that a metaphor for life? And I didn't get it at the time. So then Albert said, hey, Roosh, do you want to take a second dose? I have another 1.8 grams. And I said, well, I'm tolerating this drug pretty well.
Tommy Muhammad says, fuck, I prayed to God every time I did shrooms. I did acid one time, okay? And I ended up crying on the altar of my fucking church. I don't think I've ever told that story. But I took some acid one time. It was acid or mushrooms. And it was Wednesday night. And I went to youth church. And I was like 20 or 21 or maybe 22, 23. And I was crying on the altar of the church, and everybody was like, oh, you're having a spiritual awakening. Little did they know, I was tripping off of my asshole, and I just felt so uncomfortable that I went to the old Assemblies of God, and I went up to the old altar, and I fucking was crying at the altar, dude. Full transparency. So I kind of know where he's kind of having a bad trip right now.
Yeah, sure. I didn't know it at the time, but the full effects of the first dose had yet to hit me. So then I was getting a little bit hungry. I took a roll of bread out and I took a big bite of the bread. And when you take a bite of the bread, it expands back. And when it expanded back, I looked at it and it was creating a world, a new world of nooks and crannies and stalactites and little holes. And I made that. By me biting it in this way, I created a world that had never existed before and will never exist again.
Think of the fucking narcissism that this psychopath has, that he's eating mushrooms, then he's biting into bread. And he's like, I am the creator of worlds because I have bitten into this bread. And there is no man like me in the universe who will ever bite bread and create this majestic empire like me. Oh my fucking God.
That piece of bread right at my face, looking at it, admiring the beauty that I had made. I said, Albert, I'm glad no one is staring at me. And he said, well, actually, they are. So people at the path were like, what is this dude doing? So I turned away so I couldn't see them, thinking that if I can't see them, then they can't see me, so I can continue to admire the bread. And it took me about 15 minutes to eat that piece of bread. And I was taking out other foods and biting it and seeing all these patterns. I had pen and paper and I'm writing it on paper. I can see the individual fibers of the paper and I watched the ink dry and the color change. I was like, wow, this is really cool. And then I wiped my hands with a napkin. I threw the napkin down and then I held the napkin up. It was just a crumpled up napkin, but I held it up and thought, this is a beautiful rose flower. And I looked at it. All the folds looked like it was perfectly made by a Japanese origami master. It was perfect. It was made in a deliberate way. That's how beautiful it was. I said, I'm going to save this napkin forever. I don't know where the napkin currently is. Then I started to look at the trees more, and the branches would move kind of quick. But even if you stare at the tree trunk, that would move too. And there was a movement in all things. And I thought about it. I was like, well, if atoms move constantly, shouldn't there be movement to everything? So right now you look at the trash can podium in front of me and you're like, well, this is solid. It doesn't move. But if it's made of the atoms that move constantly, it's a filter. This podium not moving is a filter along with the chairs and so on. Because if we saw the world for how it is, well, just taking a walk down the street is going to be, whoa, look at that and look at that. So I think our brains, they filter out things for our own good so that we can accomplish, say, the mission we are tasked with in this life. Then my friend Albert wanted to show me a video online, and the video's name was Jewish ASMR. And I don't know if you've seen it, but it is a video of a man dressed up as a rabbi. He takes out 2 coins and then he rubs the coins next to the microphone. And he says, this is for the sleepy goyim to go to bed. And then he took out I think it was a $100 bill, and then he started to rub that bill against each other, and it created such a soothing type of noise. And me, under the influence of this drug, this was the funniest thing I had seen in my life. I laughed and laughed and laughed. I was just crying with laughter. I closed my eyes, and that's when the trip kind of took a different turn. I was staring at a tree. I closed my eyes, but I can kind of still see the outline of the tree. And beside the tree, there was like a skeletal framework. Was something holding the tree up? And I opened my eyes and I said, Albert, there is no empty space. Because how can there be with all the electromagnetic and the air and on and on? I could see what was in the air, it seemed. I said, I told Albert, I think there is a lattice holding everything up. And then he said, how can a lettuce hold everything up? So when you're high, it's better not to tell other high people the amazing things that you were seeing. I was talking, but now my voice started to feel disconnected. It felt like it was being played back to me from a speaker. Now, do you remember the first time you ever heard your voice on the phone and you were thinking, do I sound like that? And this is how it was. I felt like I was talking, but my voice was not coming out of me, but coming from outside of me. And then as I was going on and on, I was just speaking gibberish, nonsense. I wasn't adding any value at all.
Kind of like the entire duration of this video.
So I stopped talking. But then I looked on the asphalt path. Now, when I was high, that path seemed very far. But me and my friend, we went back to the encampment a month after, and it wasn't far. It was like here to the end of that room. And I looked, I was like, I must be high because I see an African pimp in a red jumpsuit with 4 Asian girls. And then Albert said, wow, you really are. No, wait, there is a black guy with 4 Asian girls. So the point is that I was pretty high, but I don't think I saw anything that wasn't there or that wasn't an amplification of what is there. I really do think that the way that matter is, some scientists say it exists as a wave. So there is a movement. Then once the second dose hit me, that's when the trip totally changed. I closed my eyes, and now for the first time, I could hear my own breath. I could hear the air coming into my nose and going into my lungs and then coming back out again. And this concerned me. So I had to focus on the breath. It was the main thing. And it took more energy than it normally did. So I focused on it for a bit, but then it made me feel uncomfortable. I don't want to focus on the breath. I don't want to lose it. So when I opened my eyes, that whole experience stopped. And then I thought to myself, well, Roosh, you've spent your life with your planning, analyzing things, trying to have outcomes go your way, scared of bad things happening, wanting to control the situations that you are in, always having a plan for things. And how far has that really gotten you? What do you have right now? You don't have much at all. So I decided to go with it. Let's see where this trip goes. So I closed my eyes again, and the breathing got very, very hard. I focused entirely on it. I almost chickened out a second time, but I said, no, I'm going to stay with this. So I'm breathing, focusing on it, hearing the air go in and out. That's happening for a while. And then the sound of the air stopped. I thought, that's not good. So I tried to open my eyes, but I couldn't. Now I'm starting to get a little bit concerned. As if waking up from a bad dream, I tried to move my arms and kick my legs as fast as I could, but I couldn't move anything. I had no control over the body. And at that time, I thought, I am not in my body. So where was I? Then I heard a whoosh type of sound, and then I traveled somewhere else. I was in a realm that was different. I don't know how I could tell you, but I felt that there was no time or space here. It wasn't in our space, but something else. Just a.
So at this point, he's tripping out on drugs, and he's correlating this to having some sort of spiritual awakening that only ties into Christianity, not all the thousands of other religions out there. Is just anybody else, like, how are people buying this and believing this? Joey from China says, this is the most incoherent monologue I've ever heard. Joey, that's because you're just not woke level 5,000 like him. You need to take a piece of bread, Joey, and bite into it and marvel at the majesty that you have created with your mouth. And then you'll be red-pilled to the next level. You should just buy all his books and get his course and go on his tour. Then you will see the light, my brother.
Void. It was black totally. At this point, you would think that I would be freaking out, but I was completely calm. I had no concern over being back in the body. I didn't miss the earth. I didn't think of all the things that I have here. I just felt totally calm. Here I am. Then a gray dome appeared, and it was coming closer to me. And at the bottom of the dome was a white light. And I looked at that light and instinctively felt home. This is home. This is where I'm from and where I'm going back to. And I felt so at ease. Yes, I want to go there. And
Okay, Rolflex wants to know, am I the only one confused by this speech? If you're confused by this speech or just get an overall weirdo vibe, give me a 4 in the chat. Let me just kind of check in. If you kind of see where he's coming from, give me a 1. But if you see that, like, he's kind of a little strange, 4. If you relate to him, the 1 is good too. By all means, let's continue. Look at all the 1 and 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4. Imagine being in that room. You were there in the room. Sun King with the 1 on ultra level of wokeness. Sun King, send me some bread to bite into so I can be as woke as you. I kind of do want to eat some French bread now after he mentioned about that bread. I couldn't imagine eating on acid. 1, I think Roosh just really enjoyed those drugs. I relate to the position, but not the action after. Our daily bread. Imagine sleeping at this convention. This dick is dull as dishwater.
I started to make an attempt to go there, but before I could, I opened my eyes. I was on the forest floor, curled up into a ball. I took a deep breath and I tried to talk. I tried to speak to Albert on what I saw, but I couldn't talk. It's like my chest felt a very tightness. So I said, Albert, I saw it. And he said, you saw what? And I said, I saw the source. And he said, you saw the sauce? What type of sauce? Ketchup? I was like, oh, Albert is still high. So I got up to get away from him. I found a tree trunk, and I sat down. Now I wanted to understand what I had just seen. And I have to tell you, when was the first warm day in Poland? It was the exact 1-year anniversary of when my sister died. I sat on the tree trunk. I started to figure it out, and I started crying. And I remember Albert, he would wear a Make America Great Again hat everywhere. And he came up to me, and in an attempt to console me, he handed me the hat and said, would this hat make you feel better? I said, no, Albert, get away from me. So before I tell you what I think I saw, I have to say that anytime someone has a vision, you're going to apply your own biases and your own judgments, your own experiences and knowledge. Sometimes you just see what you want to see. So what I believe I saw is that in some way, God killed me to show me where my sister's soul went and allowed me to be born again on the forest floor for a second chance at life. At the minimum, I can tell you I saw how the soul is distinct and separate from the body. Now, I thought that this experience I had was very common, maybe. Maybe everyone saw this kind of thing. And I talked to people who took this drug, and also I went online, read a lot of stories, but people didn't have the exact same experience I had.
What's up, Rolo? You've done LSD 3 times when I was 1920. But Rolo, you may have not heard this, but earlier I told the guys my story. Did you end up crying at the church altar of a Pentecostal church like I did when I did acid one time? Because that's old Roosh here. He's having a mental breakdown and creating his entire life around it. I knew I was fucked up on drugs and crying at the altar of a church, but I didn't start a whole USA tour based upon it.
One experience that people have is the out-of-body experience, where they kind of leave their body and can see themselves in their room or so on. And the other experience people have is the ego death experience, where their consciousness and being melds into the environment around them and they feel like they don't exist anymore, which seems like a terrifying thing. And maybe I had a little bit of that when I felt like my voice was being played back to me. But when I went online, the closest I can tell you that what I experienced on this drug was a near-death experience. I went back to...
That's common for people who do acid and or mushrooms, is they have a euphoric feeling that there is a God and there is a connectedness, but that's just the drugs.
Albert, and now we moved locations to a more quiet area, and he offered me a third hit of this drug. I said, I'm done. No, I received the information I needed. I'm done. And he took a third hit, actually. So while he was doing his thing, I was pacing back and forth. I had so many questions. My mind was filled with trying to understand this and, what the world was.
And get ready. The peak cringe is coming. It's taking a little while to get to it, but the peak narcissism cringe here is like, if you're a guy who just sees, people for who they are and what they're doing. Oh man, get ready.
And I'm glad that since then a lot of men have helped me to answer the questions that I had. But there was one question that I needed an answer to at that time. And I went to Albert. I knew I was taking a chance. I went to Albert, and at this time he had taken off his shirt and wrapped it like a turban around his head. He had some big sticks, and he was bashing the trees with the sticks, yelling at the trees for their crimes. And I'm thinking, man, Albert is gone. But I have to ask him anyway. So I said, hey, Albert, why did God make this world? He didn't have to. He didn't have to give us all of this. He didn't have to do that. Why did he do it? And then Albert stopped bashing on the trees, and he looked at me and said, what, and leave us hanging out there in space? And then he went back to bash on the trees. So when I needed a good answer, he gave it to me. So, what is the last thing that I learned is that this world is a gift from God. And when you are done here, you go back to Him. So, one other thing I learned from this experience is that there is nothing to be afraid of in this world. If this man right now comes up to me with a gun and says, Roosh, I'm going to shoot you, I'm going to tell him, you cannot hurt me. You can hurt my body, but you cannot hurt my soul. Only I can hurt my soul with the decisions that I make. But body, you cannot hurt that. Since then, since this experience, when I humbled myself before God, started to pray, everything has changed. My whole mental orientation has changed. My moral compass has changed. It turns out in the inverted world we live in, I was living a life that was inverted too. And then by turning to God, He lifted me up and inverted me back to the correct way. And in some cases, I believe, there's many ways to look into what happened to my sister.
Here it is. Listen it up. He talks about his sister's death and why it all happened. And we close this off with a healthy dose of narcissism.
But based on where I went, I believe that in some ways my sister was a sacrifice to save me, because my pride was such that only losing the most important person in my life could humble me enough to seek out God.
So God gave his sister cancer and killed her because God loved Roosh so much and wanted to save Roosh's soul from eternal damnation that he killed his sister. If you cannot see the fucking goddamn narcissism in that, now check out the disconnect here. This was the really, like, after I heard this, I was like, okay, I gotta do a video on this fucking ISIS psycho. Look at his eyes when he says this. There's not a fucking drop of emotion in his eyes.
Since then, since this experience,
Nervous scratch behind the head too, nervous itch.
when I humbled myself before God, started to pray, everything has changed. My whole mental orientation has changed. My moral compass has changed. It turns out in the inverted world we live in, I was living a life that was inverted too. And then by turning to God, He lifted me up and inverted me back to the correct way. And in some cases,
Here we go. He makes his little nervous gesture to adjust his paper and say his thing. Watch his eyes. Watch the lifelessness in his eyes when he says this.
I believe, there's many ways to look into what happened to my sister, but based on where I went, I believe that in some ways my sister was a sacrifice to save me, because my pride was such that only losing the most important person in my life could humble me enough to seek out God. One thing I can tell you is don't do drugs. Drugs are not a shortcut. In my case, it affirmed the path that I was on, but didn't create the path. So if you take this drug thinking you're going to have the same experience, you may be disappointed. And also some people take drugs like this and they go down the wrong path of this occult type of, we're all one and all connected. We're all going to the same place after we die. So, be a little bit careful. I don't intend to do this drug again. Last thing is that I was on this trip, actually, when I started, I was asking God, what do you want me to do? What is the mission that you have for me? Because I'm going to have a lot of free time now that I don't have to go to the bars and the clubs. And I had a dream the day before my New York City talk in late June. And in this dream, I was driving a yellow school bus. And I'm driving the school bus, and there were a couple of guys that were on the school bus too. And I'm driving, and then I see a couple other guys that I have to stop to pick up. So I stop the bus, and then the guys get on the bus, and I'm thinking, wait, where am I driving towards? So I put the bus in park, go out the bus, and look at the front to see where I am going. And the one word on the bus was heaven. So I think I know a bit more about what I have to do. Now, each day is hard. Things got easy in some ways and hard in other ways. But now I'm filled with a sense of purpose. Life is definitely not as hard as it was before. I don't see things as hopeless as they were. So I hope that the lessons and the stories I shared with you today help you experience this gift of life too. So thank you very much.
Look at the creepy satisfaction on his face. Watch that one more time. Look at him as he says thank you. Look at all the weirdo energy flowing through him. Let's take a look. Look here one more time. Take a look.
As it was before, I don't see things as hopeless as they were.
Watch how he's
So I hope that the lessons and the stories I shared with you today help you experience this gift of life too. So thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. Press 1 if you're coming to Jesus with me right now. Let's repent. Let's do this. Who's taking the God pill? Oh, but one in the chat. Who's going to the Lord? I'm going. We're going to heaven together. Oh, my God. So, yeah, Rolo says, so he is special and loved by God, and the LSD reinforced that, or does everyone who drops acid touch with a bun? He ate a jar of mushrooms, Rolo. He ate 1.8 grams of mushrooms, and then found out that God killed his sister, just like the Lord sacrificed Jesus, because he so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. And actually in John chapter 3 verse 17 it said, and the Lord so loveth the Roosh that he smite down his sister with cancer in order to save Roosh, or at least that's what Roosh said. That was the conclusion he publicly came to and wanted to say on his church tour, if you will. So, guys, I talk about this because there are so many charlatans in the red pill area, and they're slowly but surely being weeded out. Like Illimitable Man, right? This guy is some internet champion. He has a website that isn't updated in fucking years, only to find out he's in a long-distance relationship with some e-girl in Korea who's cheating on him, and he has a public mental breakdown, right? You got Roosh V, public mental breakdown due to his sister passing away, which God bless her, man. You know, losing someone to cancer or getting cancer is just, it's terrible. Unless you're Ruth Ginsburg, who apparently has survived pancreatic cancer for the 4th time now. You know, hey, elites, give us some of that good stuff down here. Rolo, yes, it was his first time doing shrooms. So, you know, God killed his sister, according to him, to save Roosh, and therefore now he's having this whole religious revival. I'm interested to see where this leads. But the reality of this whole situation is, when you look at it, you know, a lot of these PUA guys have mental breakdowns later in life because of a lack of congruency. We have Neil Strauss, who claimed that he married the woman of his dreams only to get divorced later. You got Mystery, who has Mystery, the original PUA, who has you know, mental breakdowns on his public meltdowns on his Facebook page because he's caught up over some chick. You know, you have to vet your guru, and you have to vet your mentor and be like, yo, does this guy have his shit together? Is he having a mental breakdown? Is this guy selling some fucking weirdo shit? You know, you have to critically analyze these things. And that is what we have of old Rooshy-Poo here. Rooshy-Poo and the God Pill. So, praise the Lord. And I hope you guys learned a little something from this. Be a little bit more skeptical. Be a little bit more critical of people. Because when you add it up with, you know, like I said, a little bit of psychological profiling, a little bit of body language. You know, there's a big difference. Rolo, I can't bring you on. I'm doing solo. I don't have this. Is not StreamYard. Fuck. We can have you on tomorrow though. We could talk about this, but. Or you want to Rolo? Do you want to call in? I'll fire up the phone lines if you want to call in. If you want to call in, tell me right now. And if you guys will stay and listen to Rolo, press 7 in the chat. Rolo, just let me know. Give me the word, and I'll fire up the phone line right now. You can call in. All right, here we go. I'm gonna fire up the phone lines. The Godfather, the real Godfather of the Red Pill and Manosphere, is gonna call in, not this self-proclaimed Ayatollah. So you guys are going to get a little bonus session here. Rolo gets to call in and give his 2 cents. I'm telling you, like, Anthony Johnson losing his mind, Roosh losing his mind. You know, Rolo said this the other day in our chat. He says, you know, all the people that are grifters eventually will show themselves in this sphere. So I think it's very true because old Rooshie Poo here is you know, this public meltdown is red pilling a lot of people on the charlatan pill. Let's call the British lady. Fire up the phone lines.
Welcome to Blog Talk Radio. Please enter your host PIN. When finished, press the pound key.
And that is okay. Oh, wait, that's wrong.
The PIN you entered does not match the PIN you have on file for your account. Please re-enter your PIN.
Mistake, hold on. Okay. Oh, fucking Christ, hold on.
I'm sorry, but I did not hear you press at least 4 digits of your PIN number.
Yeah.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.
You fucking bitch. Hold on.
Welcome to Blog Talk Radio. Please enter your host PIN. When finished, press the pound key.
Let me do this one more time. 1 second, boys. Okay.
To start your show now, press 1. To hear...
Since it appears you're calling back into a live show, we are reconnecting you now.
Yeah. Rolo, there you go. Phone line's right there. 657.
Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
657-383-1318.
Radio.
Call on in, Mr. Tomasi. The show is waiting in high anticipation. Oh, look at all these 7s in the chat. Everybody's ready to roll. Put the number on our DM. Okay, 1 second. Uno momento, por favor. Oh, there we go. Rolo, that you, man?
Yeah, it's me. What's up?
Oh, I'm just taking the God pill. How are you?
I'm good too. Yeah. Kind of early in the morning for me for this. I've been up for a while. I'm dealing with some writing stuff and doing some other stuff. So I saw your link in our DMs, and I was like, oh man, I got to watch this. What I think is interesting about this whole thing is I first encountered this with Goldman, and I don't want to talk shit about Goldman because I really love Goldman. I think he's a great guy, and I like what he does. I've always gelled with him really quick, but there is, I think, a certain element of this metaphysical woo-woo stuff where you take ayahuasca or you take LSD or you take some kind of psychotropic. It's always chemically induced, right? Mm-hmm. So what I've done a little bit of the reason I wanted to call in is because I've done a bit of research on this for my 4th book, which is going to be about religion. And one of the reasons it's taken so long is because I wanted to rewrite a certain section of this to kind of address this metaphysical woo-woo bullshit that's kind of infected, I think, the red pill or not really the red pill, but like the manosphere for sure. And so when you see a guy like Ajax, or you see like a guy like Jay Campbell. I don't know if you're familiar with Jay Campbell, or you see even to a lesser extent, I think people like Dr. Babe Love and certainly Goldman. There's this, I think this element of this New Age healing crystal. Drop acid and you'll feel better about yourself, or you'll meet God and all of the answers, all the questions of your existential existence or whatever will be answered for you. And so that's why I was wondering like what Roosh was doing with this, because first of all, Roosh is I can't be like an asshole about it, because I mean his sister died, right? So he's already in a traumatic state. Okay. So in a traumatic state, in an emotionally, hypersensitive emotional state, he drops mushrooms for the first time in his life. I mean, was this the first time he's ever done this before?
Yeah.
I don't know the background of what he's done. So this was his first time like dropping, well, I mean, I guess doing shrooms, right?
Yes.
And I've done shrooms before. I've done LSD before. This was back in the late 80s. In Santa Cruz, California, of all places, when I was like 19 and 20 years old, and I understand what the experience is like. I get it. I didn't see God. I didn't, I didn't have some really profound experience. I had a good time. I'm not going to lie. I understand why it's very significant an experience to someone when they're in an emotionally charged state already. I get it. But like for me, I'm an artist, right? So like it sort of amplified, I think, really what I was about, and so I got really, really creative. And I'm sure you've probably seen all that hippie art, like the the blacklight art, or the shit that we would associate with the psychedelic movements back in the 70s and the late 60s and early, so like the Grateful Dead shit, right? And what I think is funny is, like a guy like Roosh, who was very much, neo-masculinity and all about, conservative. Well, he would have everybody believe, back in 2015, 2016, that he was all about free speech, and he really he was a grifter, and he still is kind of a grifter, looking for the next wave or the next thing. I think he thinks he has his finger on the pulse of the zeitgeist of the times or something like that, and I think that's why he's kind of doing this right now. And I'm not gonna say he's not going through some sort of transformation. Maybe he is, but why is he? Is what I would ask. And so this is the guy who was saying no homosexuals, the Jews are the problem. He's following E. Michael. What's the guy? E. Michael Jones, I think, is the guy. He's the old school evangelical preacher, but he's also like very anti-Semitic, very the guy's a little bit whacked. I think I understand why like people like E. Michael Jones, but I think he might be a little bit off.
I agree.
So he's following up with that, and so now amongst all of this, he drops shrooms, or he takes shrooms, and for the first time. And so I get it why he would think that this is some sort of significant experience, like, oh, I saw God, right? Or I saw this as well. And again, this is Alex Jones, so take this with a grain of salt. But Alex Jones was saying something to the effect that there's some studies or some kind of research, and I don't know where he gets his information from, but there's some kind of research that says that the chemicals that LSD or psychotropic drugs like shrooms stimulates in the human mind are the same chemicals that are released at the point of death. Like when you die, like whatever it is about LSD or whatever it is about these drugs is released into your brain or whatever.
That's DMT. That's DMT. Yeah. That's the chemical.
Mm-hmm. Or ayahuasca or what? Yeah, and so what the idea or what the follow on is that if you if you take these drugs, then you'll have a near-death experience, right? And that's why they say, like, peyote, for instance, is like traveling into the spirit world. Or if you take LSD, you'll have this trip and you'll meet God. I mean, that's literally what the hippies used to say back in, the 60s and the 70s. Is, I took LSD and I saw God. Or what was it? Goldman was saying that he would have these really significant spiritual experiences in the Amazon rainforest, in doing some sort of
Under
planned,
the influence of drugs, right?
Under the influence of drugs, with and of course everything is very, like, again, if you put yourself into this hypersensitive, if you make a ritual of this, and you prepare yourself, like, okay, I'm going to enter into the spirit realm, and I'm going to take peyote, or I'm going to do what I'm just using peyote as an example, but like if you go and you turn the whole experience into a religious experience, then it seems, I think, more significant than it actually is. Like when I dropped acid when I was 19 in Santa Cruz, I was just with friends and they're like, "Hey, let's drop acid." And I'm like, I never did acid before, but I was like, okay, I was in my experimental phase, so I decided to do it. I got really creative, but it wasn't like presented to me as this religious, here's what we're going to do. It wasn't like the priest was handing me the tab of acid or something like that. It was just, dumb kids who likes to draw comic books and stuff like that, and I'm not going to say it wasn't an interesting experience. I had a good trip, but that's another thing, is a lot of these guys, when they have that religious experience, or they think they're having this religious experience, they're relating, well, first of all, what they can remember of it, and then second of all, they never relate the bad trips. So one of the things is if you start doing LSD, and this is true of what happened, like, to the generation of, like, baby boomers. The boomers that we hate right now, they're the first people that did LSD. They're the first people. That's the first generation, like at Woodstock. Don't take the brown acid, right? Because people were having bad trips on the brown acid at Woodstock. And so we don't hear about the bad trips. We only hear about the good trips. We only hear about I met God, and they don't tell you about the trips where the guy takes the brown acid and looks at himself in the mirror and his face melts off his fucking skull. We don't see those kinds of things. We don't hear that. We hear about, like, oh, well, God spoke to me and blah, blah, blah. And I like what you said about, like, his sister's death, and suddenly, like, that's how self-important he is like his sister died so that God could tell him to take shrooms and to get closer to God. That's a little whack.
Yeah, one of the guys in the chat said it too. He said a true commitment to Jesus Christ does not immediately get parlayed into one's latest marketing gimmick.
Yeah, well, true. And that's why I, when I first heard that he was, decided that he was going to grow his beard out and be like, Prophet Roosh all of a sudden, I'm like, this is just another shtick, man. But here's the great thing about that, and he's tapped into something that I think that a lot of sort of professional career grifters do, is they eventually a grifter will tap into religion, and some come to it sooner and some come to it later. And so really, what's the difference between what Roosh has been doing and, say, a televangelist? Mm-hmm. Or what's like at some point you're going to say the ultimate grift is saying that you are in touch with God and you are a conduit through which God is going to speak to other people, right? And what I find fascinating about this is I get accused of being a cult leader on a fucking daily basis, and yet we're ready to believe Roosh automatically just because he took shrooms. Yeah. And here's the other thing. It's like, okay, if that's the case, then why isn't everybody taking LSD? And why is it, to convert to whatever religion? And why Christianity? Can it not be, some ancient Hindu religion? Can it not be, like, is it Christian religion? Is it that God says, okay, here's the, I'm a Christian myself, right? And I have never found in the Bible where it says, take shrooms. The Lord said, take shrooms, so you'll be closer to me, right? And I think at some point we got to start asking ourselves, why is all this shit coming out now? Like when I look at guys like Pat Stedman. I look at guys like Jay Campbell, and I don't want to come down on Jay too much because I actually kind of like Jay, but he's very woo-woo, metaphysical, new agey bullshit. Dr. Taylor Burrows, same thing. What do you call him? Ballet Chad Jesus, same thing.
Yeah.
There's this leaning over into this spiritual grift, and that's why that's actually the reason I want to call in, is I completely 100% agree with you that there is this sort of metaphysical grift that's getting inserted into the manosphere right now. And if you watch my show yesterday, I was saying I really want to sort of I'm not leaving the manosphere, don't get me wrong, but I want to expand beyond the manosphere because I don't like where that sphere is going right now. And part of that is because this patriarchal, tradcon crap that gets mixed in with either traditional religions or it gets mixed in with this, new agey bullshit religion. And I think it's so ironic that these same guys who criticize boomers and criticize the hippies and criticize the degeneracy of the Woodstock generation are encouraging people to pretty much follow the same bullshit. They're encouraging people to go do drugs. You'll have this life, a consciousness expanding experience, and you'll meet God if you go do LSD. But there's a couple generations that came before them that were doing the same thing, and we're going to criticize them and call them, degenerates. But we're going to go and see if we can take your same grift and turn it to our own uses. So I just wanted to chime in and sort of give my 2 cents there, because honestly, I think the thing about Roosh converting or whatever it is to whatever his belief set is right now, you don't dare criticize it. Just me coming on here and saying I think Roosh is full of shit, and I think the shroom experience is like it's his first time, so of course it's very significant to him. He's never done shrooms before. I did shrooms. I did LSD. I've done a lot of drugs in the old days. I was just experimenting. I never got hooked on anything. I was never doing, anything like on the regular or anything. I didn't even smoke pot all that regularly back then. But I get it why for somebody who takes it for the first time and is in an emotionally charged condition already, I get why it's significant, and I get why maybe it sort of was impactful to him. But don't tell me you've had some sort of honest conversion to a religion because of a drug you took. Because this is probably something that I'm going to have to address in my fourth book now is if there is a God, that is omniscient and all powerful and all whatever, why would that God need you to take peyote to get in touch with that God? Right? I get why it's a mind altering experience. It turns your brain into silly putty. I mean, that's essentially what it's doing. I don't know what the science is behind what Alex Jones was claiming, that it's the chemicals that are released by your brain when you're dying, and so you have this really nice trip before your life is snuffed out. I don't know if that actually is something. I would have to look into that, but I would say that if you need to take a drug to get in touch with God, that's a pretty small God, right? I mean, this is supposed to be the God that's is a pillar of fire and parts of the Red Sea and all this other shit. Like, why would you need to do something like that? It's simply, even theologically, to me anyways, it just simply doesn't make sense, just as trying to rationally suss the whole thing out. But you don't dare criticize it. And that's the last thing I wanted to say is when Goldman says, hey, man, I had this really religious experience, and I think everybody should go into the Amazon rainforest and lick a frog and trip out for 4 days. I kind of have to go, okay, but you don't dare criticize that. Even the wackiest shit, right? Not to say nothing of a more traditional, I met God and the Christian God of the Bible by taking shrooms. I wonder what he would say. I wonder what his experience would have been had he taken something even harder than shrooms. Like, that's psilocybin, right? What if he took LSD? What if he took what was the other one you were talking about a minute ago?
Well,
not DMT. It's something else. Like,
Well, they're taking
like
shrooms.
So you don't like, but yeah, shrooms are like. I get that you can trip out on magic mushrooms. I get it, but you know what? That's low grade shit compared to like something like LSD.
Yeah, LSD.
And,
you're in for
and
at least 12 hours.
I know because I've done both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know because I've done. Yeah, that's another thing is you're going on this trip and like the guy that's with him is like, you know, you're hallucinating, man. You're not in your right mind. You're not, you know, like people say, well, that's the religious experience. Well, that's a pretty whack, religious experience if that's the case.
Oh yeah.
But you don't dare criticize it. And that's the thing is like when I was critical of Roosh about really pretty much anything, you know, I get blocked or I get run up the flagpole. Like back in 2015 when I said when he went on Dr. Oz and he did that whole shtick, I called him to the carpet. I said, you know what, if you're gonna pivot your marketing plan or your branding right now, okay, go ahead and do that, but don't pretend to be a victim. Don't pretend that you didn't know what you were getting into. Because this guy, up until that point had been like critical of even literally of Dr. Oz, and had been critical of the mainstream media, mainstream television and everything else. And now suddenly he goes on and wants to play that role. He probably made a lot of money off of that. And then now he wants to pivot and he wanted to be like Milo Yiannopoulos back in 2015. Well, guess what? Here we are 5 years later. And now he wants to be Prophet Roosh. Mm-hmm. And so you kind of have to, like, people, I don't think people really look at his history, but the final point is this, is like when somebody says, I had a religious experience, we step back from that. We don't want to say you didn't have that. We don't want to say that what you think happened really didn't happen, because it goes against sort of that. I think human beings want to have a religious experience. I think there's something about our brains that sort of opens us up to the possibility, if nothing else, the possibility of the supernatural. And we really want to believe something is happening beyond our five senses, right? We want to believe that something is really, significant to us. And so we kind of don't want to, like if I say Roosh's conversion is bullshit, if I say that, then I become hypocritical because what I've done is I've not attacked Roosh. I've attacked people who have the same belief. I have attacked that ego investment that the other people who might share his belief suddenly say, well, and this is interesting because when a woman gets into her epiphany phase and she says, I'm no longer going to have sex with, the alpha chads that I had sex with when I was, in my party years. When I was 23 and I was pursuing my sexual best interests back then, now I'm going to get right with God. And that's what they say. I'm going to reconnect with God. I'm going to reconnect with my spirituality. I'm not going to have sex anymore before marriage, right? So now they're 20. I want to do things the right way right now. And you don't dare criticize that person. That's why women tend to lean towards like chick crack, right?
Yep.
Because they know that you don't dare criticize that because there's enough people that agree with them. And they go, good for you, girl. Good. You're doing the right thing finally. It's the same thing. It's like an epiphany phase for Roosh. You don't dare criticize him. Because what it is if I criticize him, I'm not attacking just him. I'm attacking the idea that there might be a possibility that what he's doing is actually genuine. And so when I say that, all the people who are in that room with him right now probably agree with him. Nobody in there is laughing at him. Nobody in there is saying, you're full of shit. No one there is calling him to the carpet. They're saying, don't you think that maybe, you doing shrooms in your emotional state really had something to do with this? Nobody's going to criticize that because they know that if they do, they're criticizing not just him, but they're criticizing the idea that it could happen to somebody. That it is like a religious experience. And people become, when I talk about ego investments, people get ego invested in their beliefs. And so when you attack the belief, you don't just attack like what that person is believing. You're attacking them personally because they associate their ego with that belief. So when a girl says, "Oh, I'm going to do things the right way. I'm getting back in touch with God," and we have the single mommy ministries and things like that, where they turned over a new leaf and they're really trying to do things better for themselves. And they might actually even believe that, but it's convenient that it happens at that particular time. It's predictable that it's going to happen between like the ages of 29 and 31 for women. And in this case with Roosh, look where he's at in his life. You know, he has no children. He has no. I think you were talking about this before, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but like he broke up with his girlfriend. That's another thing that puts him into that emotional state. So his sister died. He broke up with the Polish chick or whatever, or the girl. Was it the girl in Texas or something? I don't remember.
It was Polish,
but,
Polish chick.
But
Polish
totally.
chick.
So totally guts the guy. And he's looking back on his life going, what have I actually done? What is, other than the fact that he's written these books that he deleted himself, well, what has he actually done with his life? And so maybe it is a genuine thing to him. Maybe he actually feels this way, but it's convenient that it happens at this time. It's convenient for him. And if anything, Roosh should serve as a warning for guys to avoid the kinds of decisions and the kinds of things that this guy has done. And I think he would probably agree with me on that. That's what he's trying to say is like, well, I nailed 1,000 chicks and I never found God until I took mushrooms and now I did find God. It's like, well, if that's the case, that doesn't say much about your God. And then also, it's like, look at the circumstances that led up to where he's at right now. Look at the circumstances that lead up to a girl getting into her epiphany phase and wanting to do something different with her life. And yeah, I get it. It might even be genuine at that point, but it's always predictable. It's always convenient. And it always happens in a predictable pattern because that's just what these people do. And so I think Roosh is sort of in his epiphany phase right now for himself. And I think I don't know where he goes with this from here. I don't know what else he does with this. So maybe he's sincere, maybe he's not sincere. All I know is that I think if he had an experience on shrooms, it's probably because it was the first time he took it. I would wonder what his experience would be if he took shrooms 6 months from now and then another 6 months later. I wonder if he would if you can become closer to God with LSD, why wouldn't you be taking LSD, regularly, going on I guess every 6 months or whatever. I don't know what the intervals would be, but why aren't people just doing this all the time to get in touch with God? If that's the truth, if that's the way things are.
The guy
Rollo,
the guy who provided me with this video actually attended the live event, and he's the one who analyzed Roosh. The guy that provided me all this stuff is a really good-looking guy, 6'2", has a stunning girlfriend, and Roosh was all over her, first of all, and second of all, she was Russian Orthodox, so he just was nonstop talking about church and everything, and based off the numbers, he is probably doing $20,000 to $30,000 a month from this tour, according to the guy who went to the group tour and saw all the behind-the-scenes stuff. So, it's one thing to take the God pill. It's another thing to take the God pill and monetize it. That's where the big red flags come from, in my opinion. Because I used to be involved in the Pentecostal church. I was in school to be a pastor. So, if you really come to God, you have to throw away all of your previous sinful stuff. So he still has his website up. He's still selling his books, so this is like a soft coming to Christ, in my opinion. I don't know. There's a lot of stinking red flags about all of this. That's really why I did the commentary, talking about what we have here.
Well, that's the thing. Here's another reason why it's impossible to criticize him for this or to question whether or not it's a genuine experience for him is because it follows a script that most people who have a proclivity for being overly religious, it confirms to them their own faith. It confirms for them that they're on the right path, because if a guy who it's the story, it's an archetype of the prodigal son, right? So the prodigal son takes his father's inheritance and he says, "Dad, give me my inheritance. I'm going to go and I want to go out and seek my fortune in the world. Screw you. I'm out. Thanks, bro." Goes out, gets laid, spends it on hookers and blow, and pretty much screws his life up completely. And then what happens is he comes back to his father, and of course this is actually a parable that Jesus tells, right, in the Bible. Comes back to to his father. He says, just Father, please just let me feed the hogs or let me eat the slop that the hogs have, but just put a roof over my head. Help me, right? And so what happens is the Father, which is God, celebrates and says, let's slay the fatted calf and let's bring my son who was lost to me has now come back to me, right? It's the story of the prodigal son. And we have this big celebration and we welcome him back in and we put the coat on, the richness coat on him, and we put the jewels on him, and we make him, we uplift the son who basically went off, fucked up his life and spent all of his inheritance, comes back to the fold, and now we're supposed to celebrate that. And of course his brothers say, well, what the fuck, like, I've always been faithful, how is this, why is this the thing? And of course the story is, well, my son who was lost is now returned to me. And that's, I think, what a lot that's a script, that's a classic kind of archetype, I think, particularly for Abrahamic religions. It's this classic archetype of falling away from the faith, coming back to the faith, and celebrating the fact that I rejected the faith. I said it was bullshit. I wanted to go with hookers and blow because I could have access to everything that this life has to offer. And now suddenly I come back and I realize that hookers and blow wasn't all that it was cracked up to be, and I want to come back home. And it's like that deathbed conversion, right? You live like Dan Blitzerian tell you you're on your deathbed and you go, okay, I accept Jesus, and then bang, you go to heaven.
Yeah. And
I think a lot of guys want that. Like, I think that's really an intrinsic part of a lot of people's faiths. So, and it doesn't have to be a Christian thing either, by the way. I think like when you look at what like say Goldman talks about or Jay Campbell talks about, it's always this, mystical energies and vibrations, and like The Secret, send out enough positive juju into the universe and it'll come back to you in sevenfold or whatever this bullshit is, and or sun your perineum and suddenly you'll live a healthier life. But you don't dare criticize those things because it's sort of that it appeals to that woo-woo magical bullshit that I think on some base level, most human beings want to believe that there's something beyond themselves than this. And unless you're like a hardcore atheist, unless you're like Sam Harris or something like that, you probably have at least some, even if you're not religious, you're at least in some way agnostic. And I think that this is really, just to finish this out, I think that this is really a dangerous thing for the manosphere, because remember when we talk about how we talk about the Lost Boys generation. We talk about the generation that's looking for purpose, especially guys right now, because guys are basically rudderless in their lives. They're purposeless. And so they look to a guy like Jordan Peterson, and they'll pay top dollar to fill these concert halls to listen to this guy just basically talk. And really what he's doing is pontificating, but there's parts of Peterson I really like, and then there's other parts of him where I'm just like, okay, this is just bullshit. But why is he popular, and why is he why was he popular? I think his star is kind of like fading right now. I think he's kind of like on his descent right now. But why are people looking for this? And the guys that are going to go look to Roosh right now. I mean, Peterson, when he was at his apex, I think a lot of people were like, if I criticized Jordan Peterson, it was as if I was criticizing somebody who was confirming the religious beliefs of guys who are already in the sphere. The guys that, like, if you go and you criticize Jordan Peterson on Twitter, there will be an army, even to this day, there will be an army that will brigade you and say, well, Peterson's great, blah, blah, blah. Like when Vox Day put out his book called Jordanetics, and he put out his videos criticizing Jordan Peterson, and he did it like Vox does it from a religious perspective himself. He's saying, well, Jordan Peterson's a false prophet, and he tries to grift on the like. I love Vox to death. Don't get me wrong. I think he's a good dude, but he has really took a hard turn for the religious. Peterson, hard turn for the religious. Look at Dave Rubin. Dave Rubin, who is a Jew, who was pretty much an atheist for most of his life. All he does is come into contact with Peterson, and now he's decided that he wants to rekindle his faith. Look at what's going on with with Roosh right now. Look what's going on with really the TradCon patriarch grifters that, for like Anthony. He's full of shit. First of all, okay, the 22 convention is just his promotion for the 21 convention, which is going to happen. Will probably be a thing. I don't even think 22 convention is going to happen. But the people who are involved in that, I think you will see that they, all of them, Tanner, for instance. I think maybe Goldman's a part of this as well. But if you look at this, if you look at the people who are on the roster to speak at that convention and probably the 21 convention, with the exception of maybe one or two of the guys on there, it's almost as if it's a church. It's almost as if we're going back to church.
Yep.
And we're going to teach women how to be good, godly women, right? And this is not a new message. But why would it even have an appeal right now? Well, because of the Lost Boys generation, and because of the because people are, like guys in particular, are looking for purpose. They're looking for something to do with themselves. And so what happens is you get these grifters who've gone from using the manosphere as sort of their springboard to appeal and to talk to this audience. And now, in my fourth book, I say this as well, you will see like more and more religious messaging, I think, in the manosphere going forward into 2020, at least for the foreseeable future. Maybe that'll change later, but when I lock horns with some of these guys who are evangelical pastors, I do a show called Religion and the Red Pill, and I have the toughest time with evangelical pastors because a lot of them realize that their old grift, which was the church, which was starting a tax-free organization, and they're commercial enterprises. Let's be honest, a church is a commercial enterprise, and they realize that they're in competition with other commercial enterprises, whatever those are. And so what I've seen happen, and I wrote about this in my fourth book, is what I see happening is the men are leaving those churches because those commercial enterprises have to appeal to a feminine sensibilities, female sensibilities right now. So it's all about fempowerment, and that's how the the feminine imperative has sort of assimilated mainstream religions. And these guys who are still the men that are left in those churches, they're wondering, what the fuck happened to all of the guys? Where are all the men? What happened to the men folk? But the reason is that there's nothing for men in any kind of mainstream church right now. I think men would like there to be, but organized religion is hostile to anything that is conventionally masculine right now, because if there was anything for men in those churches that wasn't ridiculous or something they could pander to, if there was something like that, it would be a threat to the power grab of the feminine imperative that's assimilating those religions right now. So what do these guys do? They hit up me. They come to me, or they come to the manosphere, and they go, that's where all the guys went. All the guys are on the manosphere. All the guys are in these forums. All the guys are on Twitter. All of these guys are following, or they're reading this book called The Rational Male. All of these guys are following Jordan Peterson. All of these guys are, there's the men are still there. They're just not in the church. So what do the male smart, anyways, the smart male grifters do is they go out into the manosphere, and what do? They try to convert the manosphere back to what their religious beliefs are. So if we can get these lost boys, and that's what we call them, the lost boys, if we can get the lost boys to be the prodigal son and to bring the prodigal sons back into the fold, that's a confirmation of their faith. That's a validation of their faith. And so that's why they hate me. Because I'm the one who's saying, look, a lot of the shit that you're saying here, they want to say, well, the religion is the original red pill, right? The Christianity is the original red pill. I'm like, okay, that might be so, but look at your churches. Look at what you've allowed to happen in your churches. You really want these guys to come back to that fold? You really want these guys to believe you? And so that's why I lock horns with a lot of these guys. But that's really what I think is going on in the manosphere right now. Is it's amplified right now. It's like that's why Jordan Peterson, with his sort of pseudo-religious messaging, is like when I criticized Jordan Peterson back like 2 years ago, I was critical of Jordan Peterson when it wasn't cool to be critical of Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
And people would brigade me, and I lost friends because of that. Like a lot was it Mark Bolivar and Abbott, I forget the guy's name. I lost friends because of that, because they were saying, well, isn't what he's doing great? He's bringing guys back to, like, he's reinteresting guys to come back to church. And I didn't realize that the reason that they were pissed off at me for criticizing him was because Peterson was doing what they couldn't do, what they wanted to do. And what I don't care what your opinion of Peterson is. Guys were saying, well, if it's getting people back to church, if it's getting men back to church, isn't what he's doing good? I go, yeah, maybe it is, maybe it's not. I don't know, but me just even questioning that was something that they couldn't abide by. Yeah. And so that to me led me to believe that really there's this base of guys right now. There's this niche market really of the lost boys, of this, like, really a generation, maybe 2 generations of guys that these guys want to sort of turn into their, not only just their marketing base, but they want to, like, bring them back to whatever their religion was or whatever their belief set was. And it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't have to be Christianity. It can be going and doing ayahuasca in the Amazon rainforest. So it's a confirmation of what those woo-woo magical beliefs are. And I think, when we talk about cult leaders, I think it's ironic that I get called a cult leader, yet that every last one of these guys is doing what would be considered classic cult techniques and cult methods and cult, like forming a cult kind of thing. And it's never been easier to do it than now. Oh, yeah. Because we have the internet. We can do it on a global scale now. We don't have, it's not just like Jonestown. It's not just like it's not just a localized thing anymore. It's not like, we're all going to take the Kool-Aid and kill ourselves anymore. Or like, do you remember the Heaven's Gate cult?
Yeah.
You remember
Apple?
They had
to like kill themselves to like time the spaceship that was
kill
coming?
themselves to get to the mothership or something like that. And we look at that and we go, oh man, that's crazy. Imagine that on a global scale now. Because we can globalize and we can disseminate that message on a global scale to generations of men, multiple generations of men who are looking for. They'll say, I'm looking for meaning. Peterson has his book Maps of Meaning and all that stuff. No, they're not looking for meaning, dude. They're looking for purpose. They want to function. They want something to do with themselves. They want to have some sort of regimen, and they want to have some sort of routine. They want to know that if they go and they, input in, output out kind of thing. Like this, it needs to be simple for them. It needs to be something that they can, they need a direction. They need a war to fight. They need a project to work on. And so you get these religious grifters that come in and say, okay, here, what you really need is meaning. You need to find a search for meaning. It's like, no, it's not meaning, dude. It's purpose. And I think that until men have like a dedicated purpose, until we can get back to doing something or having some sort of project or having some sort of direction for guys, I think we're going to see more and more of this religious bullshit.
It's going to be interesting for sure moving forward, man. Thanks for coming on and chatting today. Definitely always a nice surprise when you pop in. I think
I had to chime in because I'm in the middle of I'm on second edits for book 4 right now, and a lot of what you're talking about with Roosh is a lot of what I got in my, like, when my book on religion comes out, man, it's gonna rattle these guys' cages like you've never seen before.
I look forward to that. I mean, most of these guys are committing social suicide via the internet, and it's just interesting. It's funny to watch it all unfold. I'm going to get going here. We're going to do the Body Language Mastery webinar.
Sure.
Thank you for calling in, man, and we'll catch you on the flip side. Ladies and gentlemen, that has been Rollo Tomasi from The Rational Male. Go check him out at rationalmale.com. I think, is it rationalmale.com or is it therationalmale.com? See, let me check real quick. I believe it is maybe therationalmale.com. Let me double check here. Yes, therationalmale.com. Go ahead and check out Mr. Rollo Tomasi. Getting saucy with Rollo Tomasi on the red pill. Let me pull it up. There it is right here. That's his website. Go to therationalmale.com. His books have been massively widely received by the public. Tons and tons of positive reviews like this. 1,421 reviews with a 4.5 star rating with a staggering 80%, 5 stars or more there. 5-star rating right there. So go ahead and check out Rollo Tomassi, the author of The Rational Male. Seriously, one of the greatest books ever written in the manosphere. So, praise the Lord, guys. I hope everybody's had a wonderful spiritual awakening. Go bite some bread and realize the mysteries of God. Then take that bread, spit it out, and feed it to the birds. And then take 1.8 grams of mushrooms. Don't do drugs. And then go out there and find the God of your choice. Yeah. Until then, we'll see you on to tomorrow's episode. Body Language Mastery, Masculine Empowerment Network. Emails going out now for us. We will catch you in there for the seminar on circuit training and efficient fat loss tonight as well. For the rest of you, sorry you didn't get in. Till then, peace out.